We're going to talk now about negotiating the sale. Your ability to negotiate well on your own behalf, both in selling and in your personal life, is essential to you getting the very best prices and terms and deals that are available to you. From buying clothes to buying cars to buying houses to getting a high-paid job, and of course to making really good sales that yield the very highest amount for your company. Now, people who do not like to negotiate are people who are simply not very good at negotiating. They're afraid of rejection. They don't know how to approach it. It makes them nervous. But like riding a bicycle, negotiating is a skill that you can learn with study and practice. You can become an excellent negotiator if you really want to. And of course, I'm sure you do. Your ability to negotiate well for yourself and your company can make an enormous difference in the quality of your sales and the degree of profitability that you achieve for your organization. So let's talk about some basic concepts. First, all of life is a negotiation, from birth to death, in everything you do. You negotiate from infancy for the attention of your parents. They say that children find that the currency they have for exchange with their parents is smiles and love and hugs and kisses and laughter. And so children will be very careful in spending their currency to get the most attention and the most gifts and the most care from their parents. As an adult, you negotiate every hour of every day. And you negotiate for the bathroom when you get up in the morning. You negotiate for the last cup of coffee in the kitchen. You negotiate for the newspaper and who's going to read what part. You negotiate on your way through traffic, and you wave to people and they let you in, or they let you in, and you turn the corner and so on. You negotiate for everything that you get or fail to get. Even going into a restaurant or a cafe, they'll always seat you in a poor table. So you negotiate for a better table. You negotiate for a better view, closer to the window. You're always negotiating. The only question is this, are you good at negotiating or not? Are you good at it or not? And the answer is you can become very, very good. Now, sales negotiating is central to reaching long-term agreements with customers, especially when there's several factors involved in a business negotiation where prices and terms and conditions can change to make up a complete package. So, in business, what is the purpose of a negotiation? Very important. The answer is to reach an agreement so that 1, all parties are satisfied, 2, all parties are committed to fulfilling their obligations under the agreement, and 3, all parties are willing to negotiate again with each other. I work with a large company in Chicago, and they sell some of my products, and they pay me a fixed royalty. They pay everyone the same fixed royalty on sales volume. So the only difference that I would get versus someone else is my sales volume would be higher. Well, I learned later that a competitor of mine had gone to them and negotiated a better deal. I was getting something like 7% royalty. They negotiated 14% royalty. And they told me with great pride how they negotiated very hard, and they refused to accept the royalty that they had been paying everyone else for years, and they got a royalty that was twice as high. Well, I was a little bit surprised at this, so when they left, I phoned the president of the company and I said, "Can you explain to me what's happening here?" And they said yes, they were very aggressive in negotiating, and they would not accept anything less than 14% on sales, so we agreed. However, we are never going to sell their product. We will go along with them, we'll be pleasant and polite, but we will never sell their product, and they will never get a penny, and they never did. So the key to negotiating is to make sure that at the end of the negotiation, the other party is willing to do what they agreed to do when they entered into the negotiation in the first place. Now, rule number 1 in negotiating is to avoid negotiating whenever possible. In other words, don't negotiate it if you don't have to. By the way, if you are prepared to negotiate especially a lower price, in a sales conversation, and you suggest to the customer that you could lower the price, the customer assumes that the price was too high to start with and that you were trying to cheat them. So negotiating in a sales conversation sometimes will give exactly the wrong impression. So how do you avoid negotiating in sales? Well, you charge fair and competitive prices at all times. It's interesting. I set up my offices some years ago, and I went to a variety of different furniture stores to buy furniture from my office. And they had prices that were all over the place. They said, this is the price for the desk, $2,500. But if you're a first-time buyer, there's a 10% discount. And if you buy this desk, which is a floor model, there's 10% off of that. And because it's the fall of the year, there's a 5% discount for fall sales. And if you pay cash, then there's a 6% discount for cash. I could not figure out what the price was. And each furniture store that I went to buy all the furniture for my office had the same combination of discounts and rebates. And I finally went to another furniture store, and I remember this very well, and I walked in, and it was on a side street, and they had beautiful furniture laid out everywhere. And so I saw that the prices were very good. So I said, I'd like to get some furniture from my office. How much is this? And they said, well, the price is on there. That's a chair. It's $349. I said, yes, but I know all about negotiating for furniture because I've been to the other stores. What's the discount price? And what's the first customer price? And what's the fall price? They said, we don't do that. We have one price for everyone. It's a low price. It's a fair price. And we never lower it, and we never negotiate. I said, well, what if I bought 10 chairs? They said, then it would be 10 times $349. And what I found was that this was true, and that all the furniture was very well done, beautifully made, was guaranteed, and it was a reasonable price. And you know what I did? Instead of going back to the other companies, I bought all my furniture for all my offices from this one company. And from that day to this, we still buy all our furniture from that company. And it's one of the most profitable companies in the industry because they offer low prices for high quality and they never negotiate. So when you speak to a customer, expect price resistance. Expect what is called sticker shock as a normal part of doing business. You see, you'll never find a customer who thinks that your product price is too low. They will always think it's too high, even if they have no basis for thinking that. So when people say your price is too high, you can say that you have no authority to negotiate. When you say that, that can give you a strength in a negotiation. I have no authority. These are the prices that my company tells me to sell them at. Very often people will stop trying to negotiate with you if you tell them that you have no authority to negotiate. Now, if negotiating is essential, delay negotiating as long as possible in any sales conversation. Negotiating means giving concessions. So what we find is early concessions in a sales conversation have little impact on the customer. I had somebody call me up to sell me something recently, and they said, hello, my name is Joe Smith, and I'm selling this, and I can give you 10% off today. Now, I didn't even know what he was selling, but he was offering me a 10% discount. What we find is that if you offer a concession or a discount early in the sales conversation, the customer takes it, packages it, or pockets it, and as far as they're concerned, that doesn't even count. It's only the discounts and concessions later that the customer considers to be valuable. We also learn that discounts and concessions don't increase the attractiveness of your product or service. If a person doesn't know what you sell and doesn't understand the value and doesn't care, offering to give them a lower price does not make them want to buy your product or service. It just convinces them that you are probably trying to charge them too much at the beginning. You were maybe trying to cheat them initially by starting off with a higher price, and that is a very bad perception for you to create. So buying desire must come before concessions. The customer must want it. The customer must need it. The customer must desire it. And only then can you offer concessions to get the customer to buy now. Now, negotiating is a sales tool, and it is to be used later in the sales conversation. So when a person says, well, can I get this for less? What if I buy several units? Can I get a discount? You say, let's put that off until later. Let's put that off until you and I are both clear about exactly what it is you want that we can provide you, and then let's look at a way to make it work for you in a price-effective way. So keep delaying the discussion or the negotiation until later. Here's another discovery. Early concessions create an appetite for more and bigger concessions later. So if you give in early and you say, well, we could do this and we could do that early, then later they want you to do even more and to discount even deeper than before. So put off making concessions. The first person to concede or to make a concession in a sales conversation will usually concede and make concessions again and again. So don't be the first person to offer some kind of a concession. But always hold off and let the customer say, well, if we were to buy 10 of these units, so what kind of a deal could we get? They are now conceding buying 10 units. Now you can come back with an offer. Never use negotiating as a substitute for salesmanship. Remember, most negotiating is price cutting. Most negotiating is throwing in extras that were not in the original offer. So salesmanship, on the other hand, is building value. Salesmanship is showing the customer how his or her needs can be best satisfied with your product. Salesmanship is convincing the customer that your product or service is the ideal choice. Focus on that with the need to negotiate in your back pocket, something that you can use later if necessary, but you don't use it if it's not necessary. Now, there are several requirements for negotiating, what we call musts, that are necessary for you to begin. Negotiation must be essential to making the sale. If you don't need to negotiate, then you need not to negotiate. So if you don't need to negotiate, then refuse to do it. I've spoken to many companies and I say, can I get a better price than this? And they say, no. That's the lowest price we can possibly offer. If this price doesn't work for you, we understand. And that's it. You go to a store and you say, I'd like to buy that coat or that suit or that dress. Can I get it for a lower price? And they say, no. That's very popular. And if this price isn't acceptable, there's no lower price. Well, if that's the case, well, then people make the decision. Another must is you must have the authority to negotiate. Don't get into a negotiation and to discuss lowering or changing prices and terms if you don't have the authority to do it. So sometimes, as we said, you can say, look, I don't have the authority to make that kind of an offer or that kind of a concession. My boss is in charge of that, or my company makes those decisions. Another must is that both parties in the negotiation must be able to vary the price and terms and delivery in other details. You see, sometimes someone will negotiate with you and then they'll say, and they'll get the best terms possible from you, but then they'll say, well, I don't have the authority to make a buying decision. I only have the authority to negotiate the very best deal. Now I will take it to the people in charge who make the decision. This is called agent without authority. This is when the person negotiates and then tells you, I'm sorry, I don't have the authority to make a decision. So you must not allow someone to do this to you. If someone says to you, well, I don't have the authority to make the final decision, you can say, well, I don't have the authority to guarantee these concessions either. So we can talk about this, but I would have to get permission from my boss to finalize these terms. Now you have a neutral situation. There are three primary aims of negotiation in selling. Number one is you negotiate when it is necessary to get the sale, and not otherwise. You negotiate to build a long-term relationship with the customer, expecting to deal with this customer again and again. And you negotiate to find a way to satisfy both parties with the transaction. Let me give you an example. Many years ago, I was called in by a company to negotiate a development agreement for a real estate subdivision with a city. And I sat down with 2 of my partners and 5 people from the city for 3 days. And for 3 days, we went through a 60-page development agreement. Now, what I learned from doing my homework was that they had announced that they were going to get $3 million in advance payments from my company before they gave permission for the development. There was something like 300 lots in the subdivision, and they were going to get $10,000 per lot for roads, underground improvements, off-site improvements, and so on. So, as we went through the negotiation, all 60 pages, back and forth, they kept coming back to this $3 million. I kept putting it off and putting it off because my company did not have that money. That would have killed the sale for us. They were a young company. They were just starting off. They were able to buy the land for development, but they couldn't pay $3 million in advance. So I kept putting this off, and finally I agreed, we will pay you the $3 million. They were so happy. They were looking at each other. They were smiling and everything else. I said, however, I need to change the terms. We will pay you $10,000 per lot as we sell each lot. So the total that you will get at the end of the development will be $3 million, but you have to work with us on the timing of the payments. And they looked at each other, and this is after 2.5 days, and they said, okay, as long as we can tell the newspapers that we got $3 million from the developers, we can negotiate the terms privately. And we have managed to make the deal, and it was worth millions of dollars for everybody. So remember, the reason for making this kind of a concession was to make the deal, was to make the transaction work. Now, there are 6 primary styles of negotiating that people use. The first style is called win-lose. In win-lose negotiation, which is done by people with a very limited future, you win and the other person loses. At the end of the negotiation, you're happy and the other person is unhappy and wishes that they had not spoken to you at all. This is not a good situation to be in if you ever expect to work with that person again. Another style of negotiating is called lose-win. This is where you lose and the other person wins or comes out ahead in the negotiation. And you walk away feeling unhappy or even angry about what you've agreed to. This is not a good situation either. The third type of negotiating is called lose-lose. This is where you have 2 people who are inflexible and both parties end up with a poor deal at the end of the negotiation. Neither party is happy. They accept it because they have no choice, but neither party is really enthusiastic about the negotiation. The fourth type of negotiation is called compromise. In compromise, both parties give in to get an agreement, but neither one is satisfied with the results. All right, I'll make this compromise or this concession. Both people walk away and they feel a little bit dissatisfied. Now, the fifth form of negotiation is called win-win. This negotiation leaves both parties feeling like they won. Both parties feel better off and more satisfied, happier than they were before. And this is the best form of negotiation of all. Whenever I work with customers and clients all over the world, I tell them that my philosophy is a win-win agreement. I want you to be happy and I want me to be happy. And so I will work with you and I will do anything to make you happy as long as you will work with me to make me happy. And it's quite amazing how often they say, okay, then we'll have the same philosophy. And I have agreements and negotiated transactions all over the world, and they're all happy agreements. Now, the final style of negotiating is called no deal. Now, no deal is where the parties agree to disagree because they're too far apart. They just basically say, no, we obviously cannot make this work, so let's forget about it. Now, here's the rule in negotiation. Win-win or no deal. If both parties aren't happy at the end of the day, agree to walk away. Do not enter into a deal where people are unhappy for any reason, because it will always come back to hurt you later on. Now, preparation is the key to successful negotiating. Preparation is everything. It's 90% of your success in negotiating is where you prepare thoroughly. And in preparation, you anticipate the other person's position and their needs accurately before you talk to them. What you do is you use what is called the lawyer's method. Now, when you go to law school, lawyers are taught to prepare their case as if they were their competitor or the opposite party in the legal dispute. So you prepare your position from the other person's point of view. What you do is you use what we call the 20 idea method. And you quickly write out 20 benefits for the other party in negotiating satisfactorily with you. You also write out 20 things that the other party is going to want to get from you in the negotiation. So you're clear what they're going to want to get and what you can offer them in return. Now, in negotiating, research is very important. Talk to someone else who is familiar with the other party. Many business people will call someone that they know has negotiated with this other person and ask them about the other person. What is their style? How do they behave? Are they aggressive? Are they demanding? Are they easygoing? Are they friendly? What kind of negotiator is the other party? And that enables you to prepare thoroughly. Do your homework. Get the facts before you go into a negotiation. Go onto the internet. Go on to Google. Find out everything you possibly can about the other party and their situation before you meet with them for the first time. A friend of mine was looking at buying a company. The owner of the company gave him an offer of $6 million for the company, and he said he was not flexible on the price. My friend could either take it or leave it. So my friend called his banker, and his banker called the banker of the other person, and found out that the company was in serious financial trouble, and that if he did not raise $1 million cash within 30 days, the other person was going to go bankrupt, and that he would lose not only the business, but he would lose his home and his car and his reputation. So, knowing this information, my friend went back and he said, look, I carefully looked at the numbers, and this is what I can do. I can give you $1 million cash within 30 days, and I can give you an additional $1 million out of the profits over the next 3 years. But that's the best I can do. You can take it or leave it, and hung up the phone. The other person called back 3 or 4 hours later and said, I'll take the deal. And my friend was able to buy a company that he eventually turned around for a very low price because he did his homework and he got information about the customer's situation in advance. Now, another thing you can do is when you meet with the customer, if you have need for more information, ask the customer for the information that you need to negotiate effectively for yourself and your company. Here's a strategy that I've discovered that I use over and over. When I meet a person to negotiate with, I ask them, what would be the ideal outcome of this conversation for you? What do you want to get to make you happy? Please tell me that so I know at the beginning, and then I'll do everything possible to accommodate you, with some adjustments. It's amazing how many people will say, well, this is what I would like to get ideally. And you say, well, that's a little bit more than I was expecting to do, but let's see if we can't find a way to make it work. And in almost every case it does. Some customers negotiate as a matter of habit. In other words, they just like to negotiate. They come from a family where the parents negotiated. Some customers love to negotiate. No matter how good your price or your deal is, they still ask you to lower the price or give them better terms. Some customers will ask you for concessions immediately, and then they'll use those concessions to gain even greater concessions later. Remember, all of life is a negotiation, and everybody is negotiating with you in some way. So in every case, you must negotiate carefully and thoughtfully and with complete prior planning so that you get the very best deals for yourself and your company all the time. Now, here are some questions you can ask and answer to apply these ideas to your sales activities. Number 1, give 3 reasons why you should avoid negotiating whenever possible. Number 2, what are the 3 rules for the use of concessions in a negotiation? Number 3, give 3 of the 6 styles of negotiating, and which one do you prefer? Number 4, what are the 3 chief aims of negotiating in a sales situation for business? What are the 3 things you need to accomplish? Number 5, what are the keys to proper preparation in a sales negotiation? Number 6, what conditions must exist before you enter into a sales negotiation in the first place? Number 7, what are 3 things you can do to avoid negotiating in a sales situation in the first place? And finally, what one action are you going to take immediately as a result of what you have learned about negotiating in this session?